The Broken Eyes of Light. The night was quiet on the edge of the forgotten colony. Only the sound of metal tools echoed from a small workshop. Inside, a human engineer worked alone. His name was Daniel. People in the colony rarely visited him, and he liked it that way. He preferred machines to people. Machines never lied, never judged, and always told him when they were broken. That night, Daniel was fixing an old generator when he heard something unusual. A faint scratching sound came from the outside door. At first he thought it was the wind or maybe an animal, but then he heard a soft voice, weak, trembling, and almost broken. "Please, help." Daniel froze. He dropped his tool and stared at the door. No one ever came to his place, especially not at night. Slowly, he walked forward, each step echoing against the metal floor. When he opened the door, he was shocked. Standing, in the pale light, was a small alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, almost glowing under the moonlight. Her eyes, however, were closed and scarred, as if light itself had abandoned them. She held her hands out, touching the walls, searching for safety. She whispered again, "Please, I can't see." For a moment, Daniel did not move, his mind filled with questions. Where did she come from? Why was she here? And why was she blind? But when she stumbled forward, almost falling to the ground, Daniel caught her quickly. Her body was thin and fragile, as if she had not eaten in days. "You're safe now," he said softly, though his own heart was racing. Inside the workshop, he gave her water and a blanket. She sat quietly, listening to the sounds of his machines. Daniel noticed the strange patterns on her skin, markings that looked almost like writing, glowing faintly in the dark. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. She lowered her head. "They called me Lyra," she said in a broken voice. Daniel frowned. "Who is they?" But Lyra did not answer. Instead, she touched her face, her broken eyes, and whispered, "I only wanted to see again, even once." Those words cut deep into Daniel's heart. He had always worked with machines, repairing broken parts, restoring things people had thrown away. But here was something different, an innocent life, broken in a way no simple tool could fix. Still, a thought sparked in his mind. Machines, after all, could do what nature refused. He walked to his workbench, pulled out old blueprints, and turned on the dim light. Lyra tilted her head, listening to the scratch of his pencil and the hum of his machines. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Maybe," Daniel said slowly, "I can give you back your sight." For the first time, Lyra's scarred face turned upward. She could not see him, but Daniel saw hope flicker across her expression like the first spark of fire in darkness. The hours passed as Daniel worked. He used scraps of metal, broken lenses, and pieces of forgotten tech. His hands moved with speed, but his mind was sharper. He was building something no one had asked him to build before. Not a machine for power, not a tool for war, but a gift for someone who had nothing. All the while, Lyra listened. Sometimes she asked small questions about the sounds. Sometimes she told him little fragments of her past, how her people hid the weak, how blindness was seen as shame, how she had been abandoned. Daniel did not push her for more. He only listened. Outside, however, the night was not empty. In the shadows beyond the trees, a faint red light blinked like an eye watching. A silent drone hovered, recording every movement, every sound from Daniel's workshop. But Daniel and Lyra did not know. Inside, the sound of welding filled the room, sparks lighting up the walls like tiny stars. Finally, Daniel placed the unfinished Visor on the table. It was rough, fragile, and far from perfect, but it was a beginning. He looked at Lyra, who was now lying under the blanket, breathing softly as sleep finally took her. Daniel whispered to himself, "Tomorrow. Tomorrow you will see again." Yet deep inside he felt a strange chill. He could not explain it, but something told him that helping this alien girl would change everything. As he turned off the light, the blinking red drone in the distance sent its final signal into the dark sky, and far above, something powerful began to move, the prototype vision. The morning light slipped through the cracks of the old workshop. Daniel had not slept. His eyes were red, his hands shaking, but his mind was alive with ideas. On the table lay the half-finished visor, a fragile thing made of wires, glass, and pieces of old tech. When he turned, he saw Lyra still asleep under the blanket. She looked peaceful, almost childlike. But her scarred eyes told another story, of pain, of loneliness, of a life hidden in the dark. Daniel whispered. To himself, not anymore. He returned to his work. The visor was simple in shape but complex in design. It would catch light, translate it, and send the signals directly to the brain. At least, that was the plan. He had never tested such a thing before. It could fail. It could hurt her. But Daniel knew he had to try. The sound of tools woke Lyra. She slowly sat up, listening. You worked all night? Daniel glanced back and smiled faintly. I told you yesterday. I'm not going to stop until you can see again. Her face softened. She touched the blanket nervously. Why? Why would you help me? I am not one of your kind. My people would never do the same for you. Daniel paused for a long time before answering. Because no one deserves to live in the dark. Those words silenced her. She lowered her head, and for a moment Daniel saw her hand tremble. Whether from fear, hope, or something else, he could not tell. The day stretched on. Daniel scavenged broken drones, stripped down old comm devices, and melted scraps into usable parts. Lyra listened carefully, sometimes asking questions about the sounds she heard. He explained everything simply, as if teaching a child. The hum of a circuit, the crackle of a welding rod, the quiet whir of cooling fans. And little by little, Lyra began to smile. At one point, she reached out and touched the visor on the table. This will let me see. Daniel placed his hand over hers, guiding her fingers across the smooth surface. It will try. I can't promise perfection, but if it works, you'll see light, shapes, maybe even colors. Her breath caught. Colors. She said the word as if it was magic. I have heard of them but never known them. Daniel looked at her surprised. Never? She shook her head. I was born blind. My people hid me. They said I was a shame, a curse to the family. But I always dreamed. I wanted to know what a sunrise looked like, or the glow of the stars. For the first time, Daniel's chest tightened. This wasn't just about repairing broken sight. This was about giving someone the world for the very first time. By evening, the prototype was complete. The visor was rough, patched together, but ready. Daniel held it in his hands, nervous. He turned to Lyra. Do you trust me? He asked softly. She nodded without hesitation. Daniel carefully placed the visor over her eyes. The device clicked, into place, humming faintly with power. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lenses lit with a soft glow. Lyra gasped. Her body stiffened, and her hands shot up as if to tear the visor away. But then she froze. I see something, she whispered. Her voice shook with disbelief. Shapes. Light. Shadows moving. Daniel's heart raced. It's working. Try to focus. What do you see? Lyra turned her head slowly, her scarred eyes hidden under the glowing visor. Then, with trembling hands, she reached out toward him. Her fingers touched his arm, but her face lit with joy. You, she said, tears filling her eyes. I see you. For a moment, silence filled the workshop. Daniel swallowed hard, feeling something stir inside him. He had built many machines in his life, but nothing had ever mattered this much. Lyra laughed suddenly, a sound full of life. She looked around the workshop, pointing clumsily. What is that? That's a chair, Daniel said, smiling. And that glowing thing? A lamp. She spun slowly, taking it all in. laughing and crying at the same time. The world. The world is full of light. Daniel couldn't help but smile. But even as he watched her joy, a shadow formed in his mind. He had seen the faint glow of her skin markings, the strange design that looked like a royal insignia. She was not just an abandoned child. She was something more. And outside, the forest was no longer quiet. From the trees, hidden in the dark, 4 armored soldiers watched through their visors. Their leader lowered a scanner, eyes narrowing. "The human has made the prototype," the soldier said coldly. "The girl has it." Another soldier stepped forward. "Do we take them now?" "Not yet," the leader replied. "Let the girl see for a little longer. Tomorrow, we take them both." Unaware of the danger, Lyra stood in the workshop doorway, Visor glowing as she looked at the stars for the very first time. "They're beautiful," she whispered. Daniel stood beside her, staring up at the same sky, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. Whispers of the soldiers. The night was quiet again, but this time the silence felt heavy. Daniel sat at his workbench, adjusting the wires of the prototype visor. Across the room, Lyra walked carefully, testing her new gift. Every few steps, she laughed or gasped in wonder. "Daniel," she called, pointing clumsily. That's red, isn't it?" Daniel smiled, though he didn't look up. "Yes, that's red." She spun in a circle, staring at the glowing lamp. "And that? Blue?" "Yes," he replied, his voice tired but warm. Her joy filled the small workshop like sunlight. She kept naming colors, shapes, even her reflection in a cracked piece of glass. For Daniel, it was strange to see someone discover the world he had always taken for granted. For Lyra, it was magic. But while she celebrated, Daniel's mind was troubled. Those strange, glowing marks on her skin, the way she spoke of her people. There was more to her story. He could feel it. Finally, he asked, "Lyra, you said your people called you a curse. But who exactly are your people?" The smile on her face faded. She touched the visor nervously. "I should not tell you. If they find me, if they find you helping me." Daniel leaned forward. "I don't care about them. I only care about the truth." For a long time she stayed silent. Then in a voice barely above a whisper she said, "My family is important. My father is a warlord, one of the rulers of the outer tribes. His soldiers follow him without question. He wanted to hide me because blindness meant weakness. He said his daughter could not be seen broken." Daniel's jaw tightened. So she wasn't just anyone. She was the daughter of power, hidden away like a shameful secret. Before he could speak, the sound of static crackled faintly in the distance. Daniel froze. It wasn't coming from his machines. It was coming from outside. He stepped to the door and peered into the forest. At first he saw nothing but shadows. Then faint lights flickered between the trees, red and blue glows moving slowly, carefully. His chest tightened. Someone was out there, watching. "Stay inside," he told Lyra firmly. But the moment he stepped outside, the lights vanished. The forest stood silent, as if nothing had happened. Only the wind moved through the branches. Daniel clenched his fists. He wasn't imagining it. Someone had been there. Back inside, Lyra noticed his worried face. "What is it?" Daniel shook his head. "Nothing. Just stay close to me." But outside, hidden in the shadows, 4 armored figures stood still as stone. Their black armor reflected no light, their helmets glowing with faint lines of alien tech. They had been watching for hours, recording everything. The leader spoke in a voice like steel. "The prototype is active. The girl sees again." Another soldier tilted his head. "She looks happy." The leader's tone sharpened. "She is not meant to be happy. She was meant to be hidden, blind, weak. Her father ordered it." The third soldier asked, "Then why not take her now?" "Because," the leader replied coldly. "The human must understand first. He must know what it means to interfere. Tomorrow we strike. Tonight we let him believe he has won. Their whispers vanished into the trees as they disappeared once, more into the darkness. Inside the workshop, Lyra sat by the window, staring at the stars. "There's so many," she whispered, "like tiny fires in the sky. I used to imagine them when I was blind, but I never thought they would be so beautiful." Daniel sat beside her. He wanted to tell her about the soldiers he thought he saw, but he stayed quiet. She was happy, and he didn't want to ruin that moment. Instead, he asked, "Do you regret it, seeing the world now?" She turned to him quickly, her new eyes shining under the visor. "Never. Even if they take it from me tomorrow, even if I see only for one night, it is worth everything." Daniel stared at her, his heart heavy. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a storm coming. The night grew colder. Lyra eventually drifted, to sleep, her head resting against the wall. Daniel stayed awake, watching the forest through the cracks of the window. He thought of the blinking lights, the faint static, the shadows between the trees. Something was out there, something waiting, and he knew deep down that when it came, his life would never be the same again. Far away in the dark forest, the 4 soldiers moved silently through the undergrowth. Their armor made no sound, their weapons gleaming faintly in the moonlight. One soldier whispered, "What about the girl? If she resists?" The leader answered coldly, "Then we remind her who she belongs to, and the human. He will pay for giving her what was forbidden." The night swallowed their voices, leaving only silence. The confrontation. The next morning felt heavier than usual. The sun rose behind thick clouds, casting a gray light over the forest. Daniel was at his workbench, fixing loose wires on the visor, while Lyra sat near the door, staring at the trees. She had not stopped smiling since she gained her sight, but that smile was thinner now. "Something is wrong," she whispered. Daniel looked up. "What do you mean?" Lyra hugged her knees. "The forest feels different, like it is holding its breath." Daniel frowned. He had felt it too, the silence, the weight in the air, but he didn't want to scare her, so he forced a smile. "Maybe it's just the weather." But before she could answer, the sound of heavy footsteps shook the ground. Not one, not two, several, moving in perfect rhythm. Daniel's stomach dropped. The door burst open. 4 figures in black armor stepped inside, their weapons glowing faintly. They filled the workshop like shadows come to life. Lyra gasped, backing against the wall. The leader stepped forward, his helmet glowing with a cold blue light. His voice was sharp, commanding. "Human, you have something that does not belong to you." Daniel stood quickly, moving between Lyra and the soldiers. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled. "She came to me. I only helped her." The leader's visor turned toward Lyra. "Princess Lyra," he said coldly, "your father ordered you hidden. You were never meant to be seen, and now you carry forbidden light." Lyra's body shook. "No," she whispered. "I will not go back, not blind, not broken." The soldier raised his weapon. "You will obey." Daniel grabbed a welding torch from the bench and lit it. The blue flame hissed. He stepped forward, his jaw tight. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then the leader laughed softly, a sound without humor. "A human dares to stand against us? Foolish." The soldiers moved in, their armor clanking as they spread across the workshop. Lyra clung to the wall, her visor glowing bright with fear. Daniel's heart pounded, but he stood firm. "Stay back," he shouted, waving the torch. The nearest soldier lunged. Daniel swung the torch wildly, sparks flying as it struck against metal armor. The soldier hissed and stepped back, but another moved in from the side. The workshop erupted into chaos. Tools crashed to the ground, machines sparked and smoked, the air filled with heat and noise. Daniel fought desperately, swinging, blocking, kicking, anything to keep them away from Lyra. But they were faster, stronger. One soldier grabbed Daniel by the arm and threw him across the room. He crashed into the wall, pain exploding through his body. The torch clattered to the floor. "Daniel!" Lyra screamed. She grabbed a heavy tool from the table and swung it blindly at a soldier. This time she saw him coming. The visor guided her and the tool struck his helmet hard. The soldier staggered back, surprised. Her breath raced. "I can fight now, because I can see." For a moment, Daniel's heart filled with pride. She was not helpless anymore. But the leader raised his hand, signaling the others to stop. The room fell silent except for the crackling of broken wires. He stepped closer to Daniel, who struggled to rise. The leader's voice was cold and final. "You have interfered with the will of the Empire. For that, you will be punished." Daniel spat blood and glared up at him. "Do whatever you want to me, but she stays free." The leader tilted his head. "You care for her? A human, protecting one of us?" Daniel forced a weak smile. "Someone had to." For a moment, the leader said nothing. Then, without warning, he raised his weapon and fired into the ceiling. The blast shook the workshop, sending sparks and smoke everywhere. Lyra screamed as debris fell around her. The leader's voice cut through the smoke. "You will come with us, Princess, and the human. He will learn that defiance has a price." The soldiers closed in again, surrounding them both. Daniel staggered to his feet, ready to fight even with nothing left in his hands. But Lyra suddenly stepped forward, placing herself between Daniel and the soldiers. Her visor glowed brightly, her voice clear and sharp. "No, I will not go with you. Not blind, not broken, not ever again." The soldiers hesitated. For the first time, the weak princess was standing tall, defying them. Daniel stood beside, her fists clenched. "You hurt her. If you want her, you'll have to kill us both." The leader's helmet tilted slightly. His voice was cold as ice. "Very well. If that is what you choose, then you will learn what true power means." The soldiers lifted their weapons, light charging at the tips. Daniel's heart thundered. Lyra gripped his arm tightly. The air shook with energy. And in that moment, Daniel knew. This was no longer about fixing broken machines or helping a lost child. This was war. The fight for light. The workshop shook as the soldiers raised their glowing weapons. Sparks hissed in the air, heat burned against the walls, and smoke coiled through the ceiling. Daniel stood tall despite the bruises on his face, while Lyra clung to his arm, her visor glowing bright. "Now," the leader said coldly, "you will learn what it means to defy us." With a flash of light, the first soldier lunged forward. Daniel ducked just in time, the weapon slicing past his head and burning into the wall. He grabbed a wrench from the table and swung it with all his strength. The metal crashed against the soldier's helmet, sending him staggering backward. Lyra gasped, then lifted a toolbox and threw it at another soldier. It clattered loudly, distracting him just long enough for Daniel to slam a chair into his chest. But the soldiers recovered quickly. They moved like shadows, faster and stronger than anything Daniel had faced. One struck him across the ribs, sending him sprawling across the floor. Pain seared through him, but he forced himself back up. He couldn't stop. "Not now. Stay behind me," he shouted. Lyra shook her head. "No, I can fight too. I'm not blind anymore." Her words cut through the chaos. Daniel saw it in her eyes, strength he hadn't noticed before. She was no longer the fragile girl who had stumbled into his workshop. She was learning, growing, standing. Another soldier came at her, swinging a blade of energy. But Lyra ducked, guided by the visor's sharp vision. She grabbed a pipe from the ground and struck his leg. The soldier stumbled, shocked that she could even touch him. Daniel seized the moment. He lunged forward and smashed his wrench into the soldier's helmet. The visor cracked, sparks flying. The soldier collapsed, stunned. "That's one," Daniel shouted, chest heaving. But the leader only laughed. "Do you think you can win? You are only a human and she is only a mistake." Daniel clenched his teeth. "She is not a mistake, she is the reason you're afraid." The leader raised his weapon, charging it with deadly energy. The glow filled the room, brighter and hotter with each second. Daniel grabbed Lyra and pulled her close. The blast fired, Searing light tearing through the workshop. Machines exploded, walls cracked, fire spread across the floor. The workshop was turning into a burning trap. Coughing through the smoke, Daniel dragged Lyra toward the back. "We have to move now." But the soldiers blocked the way. Trapped. Surrounded. Lyra looked around, eyes darting through the smoke. For the first time she could see in the chaos. She spotted a small power unit sparking in the corner. Her mind raced. If she could overload, maybe it would give them a chance. "Daniel," she shouted. "The generator, hit it." Daniel glanced at her, shocked. "It'll explode." "That's the point," she said, gripping his arm. "Trust me." Without hesitation, Daniel sprinted toward the unit. The soldiers chased, weapons raised. At the last second, Daniel slammed his wrench into the generator. The machine screamed with sparks and light. "Get down," he yelled. The explosion tore through the workshop. Fire and smoke blasted outward, throwing everyone off their feet. The soldiers staggered, their armor scorched and damaged. For a brief moment, the battlefield was chaos. Daniel pulled Lyra through the smoke toward the broken wall. They stumbled out into the forest, coughing, their bodies covered in ash. Behind them, the workshop burned, flames reaching into the sky. But the fight was not over. The soldiers emerged from the wreckage, their armor cracked but still functional. The leader's helmet glowed fiercely through the fire. "You cannot run," he shouted. "The Empire does not forgive." Daniel gritted his teeth, pulling Lyra forward. "Then let them come." The forest became their battleground. Trees shook as the soldiers gave chase. Lyra guided Daniel through the dark paths, her visor glowing, showing her every root, every branch, every shadow. For the first time, she was leading him. They ducked, dodged, and ran as the soldiers fired behind them, energy blasts cutting through the trees. The night exploded with fire and smoke. Finally, they reached a clearing. Daniel turned, ready to fight again, though his body screamed in pain. Lyra stood beside him, gripping her pipe tightly, her visor shining like a beacon in the night. The soldiers stepped into the clearing, weapons raised, their leader at the front. "You cannot escape," he said. "Surrender now, and perhaps we will spare the human." Lyra stepped forward, her voice sharp and clear. "No, you will not take him. You will not take me. I am not broken anymore. I am not yours." The leader raised his weapon slowly. "Then you both die," but before he could fire, Daniel threw the broken wrench straight at his helmet. The strike didn't destroy it, but it was enough. The leader stumbled back, giving Daniel and Lyra one last chance. They ran again, deeper into the forest, vanishing into the shadows. Behind them, the soldiers regrouped. The leader's voice was full of rage. "Let them run. Let them think they are safe. Tomorrow, the Empire itself will come for them." The forest fell silent once more. The escape. The forest was alive with sounds. The crack of broken branches, the rustle of leaves, and the distant hum of pursuit. Daniel and Lyra ran as fast as they could, their bodies burning with exhaustion, lungs screaming for air. Behind them, the soldiers regrouped, relentless and unyielding, their glowing weapons cutting through the darkness. Daniel's hand gripped Lyra's tightly. "Stay close," he shouted. "I can see, Daniel," Lyra replied, her visor glowing. "I can guide us, trust me." Her voice was steady, strong, far stronger than Daniel had expected. With her new vision, she led him through twisted paths, ducking under low branches, leaping over roots, and avoiding pitfalls that Daniel wouldn't have noticed. They reached a small stream, its water glinting under the moonlight. Lyra paused, looking at the reflections of the trees. "We can use the water to mask our trail. Follow me." Daniel nodded, letting her guide him. Step by step, they moved through the shallow water, careful not to make too much noise. Behind them, the faint glows of the soldiers were still visible, but now they were slower, frustrated by the shifting water and darkness. For a moment, Daniel dared to breathe. Maybe they could escape. But Lyra shook her head. "It's not just them. There's more coming. I feel it." Daniel frowned. What do you mean? She stopped, her visor glowing brighter, scanning the tree line. Ships. Above us. Not just soldiers. An entire fleet. My father's forces. Daniel's heart sank. This was no longer a small chase. This was an empire hunting them. They pressed on, moving deeper into the forest. Lyra's enhanced vision allowed them to dodge traps, fallen trees, and natural pitfalls. Yet every step forward felt heavier, more dangerous. Finally, they reached a small cliff overlooking a dark valley. Below, the landscape stretched endlessly, with shadows of ruined buildings and abandoned machines. Daniel took a deep breath, looking down. We can't jump that. Not alive. Lyra shook her head. We won't. There's another way. She pointed to a narrow ledge running along the side of the cliff, hidden by darkness and overgrown vines. We can follow this. It leads to the old mines. I know them. I used to hide there. Daniel's eyes widened. You remember? Lyra nodded, stepping onto the ledge. Even blind, I remember the paths, the shapes of stones and roots. Now I can see. We have a chance. Together they carefully moved along the ledge, balancing on the narrow path. The soldiers below shouted and fired their weapons, the glowing blasts slicing the air around them. Sparks of light danced on the cliff walls as the shots narrowly missed. Daniel felt a surge of fear and determination. Almost there, he whispered. Suddenly a branch snapped under Lyra's foot. Daniel grabbed her arm just in time, keeping her from falling. She looked at him, eyes wide. Thank you, she whispered. I almost... Don't. Keep moving, Daniel said, his voice harsh with adrenaline. Finally, they reached the entrance of the abandoned mines. It was dark, silent, and eerie, but it offered them cover. Lyra held up her visor. This way. Inside, the cool air of the mine was a relief. Daniel let himself breathe for the first time in hours. We made it. Maybe, but Lyra shook her head, moving deeper. No, we're not safe yet. They will track us, and my father, he will come himself if we hide too long. Daniel looked at her, realizing something important. You're not just guiding me, you're leading us. You're the reason we're alive. Lyra smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I told you before. I can see now. But I can't forget what I felt when I was blind. I won't let anyone take that from me again. They settled in a small chamber of the mine, hidden from view. Daniel checked the visor, repairing minor damage from the chase. Lyra watched the dim glow of the device on her hands. You saved me, she said softly. But I think we saved each other too. Daniel smiled, though tired. Maybe. But we're not done. Not yet. This is only the beginning. Outside, the wind carried faint echoes, the distant hum of engines and voices. The Empire would not stop. The soldiers would not relent. But for now, Daniel and Lyra had found a moment of safety. Lyra looked toward the mine entrance, eyes glowing with determination. Tomorrow we move again, we have to stay ahead, and Daniel... Yes? I'm not going back, not blind, not hidden, not ever. Daniel nodded, gripping her hand. Then we fight. Together. The mine was silent again, but their hearts burned with resolve. They knew the Empire would come. They knew the soldiers would hunt them. But they also knew that for the first time, they had hope. And hope could be stronger than fear. The choice of humanity. The dawn broke over the horizon, painting the forest in shades of red and gold. Daniel and Lyra crouched on a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley below. Their breaths came in heavy pants, their bodies exhausted from the chase, the fight, and the endless hours of running. Do you think they'll stop? Daniel asked quietly. Lyra shook her head. No. My father, his soldiers, the Empire itself will come. They don't forgive. They don't forget. But we can't stop either. Daniel looked at her, the visor glowing softly on her face. For months, she had been blind. Now she could see everything, the colors, the shapes, the world itself. And, more than that, she had found courage, strength, and determination. "I can't believe how far you've come," Daniel said, almost in awe. Lyra smiled faintly. "I wouldn't be here without you. You gave me more than sight. You gave me freedom." Daniel's smile faltered. Freedom came at a cost. The soldiers would return, the Empire would send more, and Daniel knew the real choice was coming soon. Suddenly, the faint roar of engines filled the valley below. Daniel and Lyra ducked behind rocks. Ships hovered over the trees, sleek and menacing, their lights cutting through the morning mist. The Empire had arrived. "They're here," Lyra whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. "We can't outrun them forever. We need a plan." Lyra placed her hand on his arm. "Then we fight or we run. But I won't go back, not blind, not hidden, not ever." Daniel nodded, his mind racing. He thought of the prototype Visor, the battles they had faced, the fires, the explosions, the soldiers. They had survived so far, but only by luck and courage. Now they needed something more. "Then we make them see what we're made of," Daniel said. Lyra smiled faintly. Together, they moved quietly through the rocky terrain, using the shadows of the cliffs to hide from the patrolling ships. Lyra guided Daniel with her enhanced vision, pointing out the weak spots in the enemy positions, the gaps in their patrols. For the first time, Daniel realized how much she had grown. She wasn't just a child needing protection, she was a leader, a fighter, a force. Suddenly, one of the soldiers spotted them. "There, on the ridge," he shouted. The other soldiers in ships turned their lights toward them, weapons glowing. Daniel grabbed Lyra's hand. "Run!" he shouted, but Lyra stopped. Her visor flickered with light. "No, wait, we can't just run. This is our chance." Daniel frowned. "Chance for what?" "To make them see," she said. "The human gave me sight, and now I can fight too. If we take a stand, maybe we can change the outcome." Daniel realized she was right. They could not hide forever. If they ran, the Empire would hunt them relentlessly. But if they fought, they could strike fear, show strength, and maybe, just maybe, survive on their own terms. The soldiers advanced, energy weapons glowing bright in the morning light. Lyra stepped forward, raising her hands. Daniel followed, gripping a makeshift spear from the rocks. "Stop," she shouted. Her voice carried over the battlefield. "I am not yours, I will not go back, and the human, he will not let you take me." The leader stepped forward, armor glinting in the sunlight. "You dare defy us?" "I do," Lyra said, firmly, "because I can see, and I will never be hidden again." The soldiers hesitated. Something in her voice, her stance, her confidence, made them falter. Daniel saw it too. The girl they had sought to control was no longer weak. She was strong, and the human who had protected her was ready to die beside her if needed. Daniel took a deep breath. "If you want her, you'll have to fight us both, and you'll regret it." The soldiers raised their weapons again, but the hesitation had already given Daniel and Lyra the advantage. With quick, precise movements, they ducked behind rocks, using the terrain and shadows to their favor. Lyra guided each move, directing Daniel with her new vision, and together, they struck with speed and determination. The leader's calm demeanor began to crack. He had underestimated them. Daniel realized that strength did not always come from power. It came from courage, from loyalty, from protecting someone who could not protect herself. Finally, the leader shouted, "Fall back! Report to the Empire." The soldiers retreated, leaving Daniel and Lyra standing on the ridge. Their bodies were bruised, their clothes torn, but their spirits burned brighter than ever. Lyra turned to Daniel, tears in her eyes. "We did it. For now." Daniel nodded, pulling her close. "For now. But this is only the beginning." The Empire will not give up. And neither will we. She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with gratitude and determination. I am no longer blind. I am no longer hidden. And I will never forget what you did for me. Daniel smiled, his heart full. Then we fight in together, whatever comes next. Above them, the sky began to glow with the rising sun. For the first time in her life, Lyra could see it fully. Light, warmth, color, the world she had dreamed of. And Daniel knew that no matter what happened, they had made a choice. A choice to live, to fight, and to protect the humanity within them, no matter how dark the galaxy became. The choice had been made. And for the first time, hope burned brighter than fear.